Hey out there, thank you for joining me today here at Gen3sis Studios. My name is Lavin, I'm a sculptor. I'm located here on the property of Harrington Harbor North Marina Resorts. We're a few of us that are resident artists in this building, along with our intrepid founders, decided to put on regularly scheduled presentations. So the presentation I chose, the topic, is all about you, it's about the viewer. Of course, I'll be talking a little bit about myself, but the topic here is finding your personal inspiration and how to produce art from an inspired state. I hope that this presentation will inspire you, so if it doesn't, I haven't done a very good job. The reason I think it'll be inspirational for a lot of us is I discovered my artistic talent late in life. I continue to be self-aware of that process of discovery and how it manifests and my journey into developing art of my own. So I'll be attempting to share that with you, again in an effort to inspire. I'll be moving at a little faster pace than your decent TED Talk. I want to get you through this. I know your time is valuable, so I hope I don't lose anyone, but hopefully the Q&A session that follows this will give you the opportunity to fill in gaps that I've created. So let's just dive right in. I've got 4 questions for you that should challenge you a little bit, and they're pertaining to what inspires personal inspiration. So the first here is what is your talent? What are you good at? This is probably based on how you fill your time and what your self-interest drive you towards. Number 2 is what pre-existing works inspire you. Number 3 is how will you educate yourself to form your unique skill set into a unique idea. And number 4 is how will your artistic expression emerge. Excuse me. All right, the first question, what is your talent? What are you good at? I want to get into photography, tree style, for example, but my personal favorite for the purposes of this presentation is the talent for culinary, because it's one of the only talents that has all 5 senses at play, and it's something everyone can identify with. We all have to eat, and I'm sure that all of us have had the experience to cook for others and enjoy the social aspect that culinary provides the opportunity for. So I've noticed there's 4 main categories of people that identify artistic discovery in their journey. Number 1, some are born into it. They have an early self-awareness of a good talent. In this category, I like to put the National Symphony Orchestra and the first chair violinist. It's guaranteed that person identified and was able to train or refine that talent for an entire lifetime, and as well as ballet or ballerinas, and the ballerina, it's just the most beautiful form of physical expression that is in harmonious accord with music, and obviously that's a talent that takes a lot of time to refine. Number 3, some perhaps a little later in life take an introspective, self-aware approach and seek out a specific discipline or art form. Excuse me, I know a lot of people that fall in this category, and I commend them for the discipline that it takes to do that. I certainly had an issue with the discipline that it takes to do that. So number 4, some fall into an awareness by accident, a life experience being thrust upon them. This may allude best to a subconscious emergence, the power of the subconscious, or Carl Jung's collective unconsciousness. So I've noticed, I know that personally I was in the category number 4 and discovered my talent late in life by accident, literally by an accident. So a little background that I hope will inspire anyone else who thinks they might not have a talent that's in the previous list there, or might think that it's too late to develop one. Earlier in life I finished school and I was focused on climbing the corporate ladder, held a couple good jobs in IT, running the rat race, and then I ended up being relocated to the West Coast with a company called Wingcast, which was a Ford-owned company working to develop a competitive product to GM's OnStar. Long story short, after years of work, intense work in a pre-launch environment. The economy went bust, Ford pulled the budget, and the company went through a corporate shutdown. So all that work was lost for me. It was rather devastating. The only good that came out of this personal tragedy was that Ford provided us with a generous 6-month salary lump sum and a year-long extension of Ford's health coverage. I was devastated. My ego was totally wrapped around my aspirations to secure a long-term career with Wingcast. The corporate shutdown left me with something of a void of personal purposefulness. My first move was to run off to Australia to meet up with friends because I was striving to fill that void. And I learned that you should never go toe-to-toe with an Australian, by the way, because they are genetically engineered with a bottomless tolerance. So I'm Irish, and I knew exactly how to fill up my 80 or 100-hour work week that disappeared. And again, trying to fill that shattered ego void, every day became St. Paddy's Day. So with too much time on my hands, I ended up putting myself through a period of hell. It took a while, but finally I admitted I needed some help. And I went to a pish-posh rehab called the Cairn Foundation, which is located right up here in Pennsylvania. After spending 3 days in isolation, purging all the beer hops out of my system, I was called into the accounting office and told that my Ford Cobra insurance fell through some silly loophole with coverage. It turns out that Aerosmith went to the Cairn Foundation, where they got sober and liked the place and appreciated the methods and the approach to sobriety and recovery there, that they left a trust fund. So I was pulled into a little interview with some of the counselors. Retrospectively, I know they were trying to feel out my sincerity to find recovery. And they let me know I qualified for the trust fund that was extended for people in my position, because $36,000 for a 30-day stint was quite a stretch. So after this gift from Aerosmith, I took the opportunity for recovery very seriously, and I just resigned myself to doing whatever I was told. After a few days in, I entered into a art therapy session. We were told to draw anything in the room. I told the therapist that I've never even drawn so much as a stick figure in my life. I chose to draw the attractive girl sitting to my right, and she had really cool dreadlocks. After I finished, the girl she loved it. She loved my rendering, and she wanted it. The therapist loved it too, or she really appreciated it, and let me know that it was indicative of a talent. And she made a couple copies. So anyway, I left the Cairn Foundation with 2 gifts: recovery and an artistic talent I never knew I had. So inspired with a new lease on life, I was accepted into the University of Michigan and dedicated myself to the pursuit of a second degree, which I thought at the time would propel me through any glass ceilings on my way up that corporate ladder. I converted my off-campus apartment into a studio. After about 3 years, my art gradually went from a hobby, I was rather shy about it, into sculpture. So the moral of the story is, if you've fallen a bit down your ladder of aspirations, you don't have to wait around for Aerosmith to give you a handout. Before I got some help, I was pitiable. My situation was pitiable. And I even had to go through the emasculating and humbling experience of accepting government handouts. So that Aerosmith piece may sound somewhat glamorous, but Steven Tyler didn't walk in and hand me any money. And again, it was that period of my life was tragic. There was no glamour involved with where I was. So I'm sure that with the comorbid catastrophe that my life had become, if I can make it through that, anyone could. Also from that story, I learned that anyone might be suppressing a talent they don't even know they have. So the subconscious has a way of bringing your true purpose to the surface, the Jungian kind of way, Carl Jung, and the subconscious collective that we all partake in. But please, there's no need to walk through the hell I walked through. There's no time like the present. And perhaps if you pick up a pencil or a camera or that old typewriter in your garage, you might surprise yourself. So for me, it has always been what pre-existing works inspire you. This is a great way to identify with the talent that's suppressed. If you don't think you have one, but you find yourself cleaving to specific pre-existing works and you feel inspired by that. For me, it's always been my three heroes, which are Michelangelo, Da Vinci, and Alexander the Great. So after the discovery of the talent, I was compelled to dig deeper into my education of these three masters, and I was hoping to stand on some pretty broad shoulders there, but mostly I spent my time just emulating some of their works for practice. So my passion for understanding the greatness of these three stems primarily with Da Vinci and Michelangelo, and the fact that two of the top 5 geniuses in human history lived in the same time period, in the same location. I believe that genius inspires genius, so my focus was on their collaborative, communicative forms of competition. These two photos depict a public competition between the two of history's most profound geniuses. So, how will you educate yourself to form your unique skill set into a unique idea? I believe that self-interest is what drives true education. I can't emphasize enough how important education was in my personal journey to guide my artistic discovery and the manifestation of my art. After my university days, I learned that statistically, people only retain 15% of their education in memory. Therefore, I believe that self-interest in a pursuit, in a present objective drives a quest for holistic knowledge, which retains close to 100% efficacy. So if your eyes are on and you're working in a present tense and you need to find out information about how to apply knowledge to getting an objective done, I think this, the way that works is much more valuable in terms of educating yourself than maybe you had in a curriculum-based school education. So on this topic of education, my method here in this presentation is not to teach or tell you what to do. I feel that the best practice is to explain my personal journey, which demonstrates fruitful results. It's self-evident that my method for myself was a valuable means for me to get to a point where I started developing things that looked decent. So I feel that the best practice is to explain my personal journey. I'm not a preacher or professor trying to jump up on a soapbox and pontificate. I truly believe that artistic expression is your unique journey, one that will demonstrate and share your personal inner inspiration with others. So my personal education started with the Renaissance, and specifically drilled down into the Neoplatonist society, which this picture demonstrates. The Neoplatonist society was led by the philanthropy of Lorenzo Medici, who managed all the money and accounting for the Catholic Church. So he was well equipped to gather all the best philosophers, architects, poets, artists, and other talented individuals of this time period to exchange ideas. Here you can see Michelangelo presenting his first marble piece to Lorenzo. In the background you can see another polymath genius named Pico della Mirandola. So here's an image of Pico. All right, so before I proceed, we'll be delving into a little bit of religious material herein, but only in the context of what was typical of this time period, where church and state were still combined. This being said, I would like to present the original Greek philosophical definition of the term spirituality, which reads as an inspired state of human origin within us that intuitively guides the mind towards things in one's environment that are useful and available in the aspiration to produce the means for a better life. So notice this definition does not reference chosen mystical types with auras and angels hovering above their heads, delivering message about the mystery of the afterlife. Instead, this term spirituality speaks to the living aspirations of man in a present reality and in a pragmatic way, conforming to a personal belief system. So for the purposes of this presentation, I will use the term spirituality synonymously with the term mindfulness. So mindfulness is a nice complement to my work, which I'll present herein as an exhibition, which delves into the neuroanatomy of the mind, which was believed at the time to be the physical and presently to be the physical foundation for human consciousness, which is the final frontier of our scientific discovery, apart from space travel. So Pico della Mirandola, as seen in the photo above, he wrote an oration or a treatise named The Dignity of Man. So this is known to have sparked off the entire Renaissance, and it's a valuable thing. It was valuable for me to read. It's truly inspiring, and I would recommend it. So this oration challenged the authoritarian dogmatic practices at the time that created divisions between religious institutions. So within this text, he suggested, and others, he suggested a hermetic revolution. This is a reference to Hermes, who was always depicted with the caduceus and with a winged head and winged feet. Hermes was the messenger of the gods. So the Hermetic Revolution was based on the idea that all worked under the premise that all religions worshipped the same Godhead, who manifests among different cultures in a unique and varied way. He spoke of scientists and atheists who have already developed a moral, independent code for living, along with all religious practitioners alike. So his philosophy was all-inclusive. This presented a revolutionary idea based on each living person on earth as being the embodiment of a personal temple equipped with the means to choose a personal code or a covenant with a God of their own individual understanding. An independent and equal opportunity to intuitively understand a means of self-betterment. So with this controversial revolutionary idea, Pico used subterfuge, which was an underlying revelation, and it was used as a literary device to promote his message within his writing style. And it's genius how it was orchestrated. You can read it today and probably appreciate the same subterfuge, but at the time it was so well written that everyone that sided with the contemporary traditionalism, it went pretty much over their heads. Which was a writing style that helped him to avoid persecution while using his other document, which was associated to the dignity of man, which was the 900 This predated the 94 thesis that Martin Luther wrote, but it was equally as significant. Pico, unlike Martin, who addressed 94, he addressed 900. 900 items of issue. And his thesis was based on the unification of all religions working together under an understanding of a singular Godhead, which of course would fundamentally unite and tear down the walls of division that stands between religions even to this day. So here's a depiction of Hermes, who wore wings of the Godhead, which represent a human-inspired state of consciousness. This will be important in my last few slides because I use the same symbolism to demonstrate an enlightened state of mind or an expanded consciousness. This is one of the most iconic Michelangelo paintings in all of art history, which I'm sure everyone can identify with. Here we have Adam and the Father, and he's coming through the clouds with that outstretched arm, and the unity of the two hands. I've drawn that a million times. Okay, so the question guiding all of my research: did Michelangelo align himself with the Neoplatonist society under Lorenzo Medici, the revolutionary Hermetic philosophy proposed by Pico, and just like Pico used subterfuge as a means to deliver a message? And what I found is the answer is a resounding yes. So a neurosurgeon was walking through the Sistine Chapel, and he was on vacation. He looked up and immediately recognized a human brain in the depiction of the creation of Adam panel. The creation of Adam panel, which was the one we just looked at previously. Here's what he recognized. As you can see, the human brain fits almost perfectly into the painted Father image of the Father reaching out from above. Notice the formation of the curved right arm that conforms to the geometric convention of the hippocampus and the corpus callosum. Both these unite the right and the left side of the human brain. So to validate this idea, with this discovery by the neurosurgeon, to validate the idea that Michelangelo used the outline of neuroanatomy as a form of subterfuge. So just in validation with a historical fact, Da Vinci and Michelangelo both practiced dissection at a time when human dissection was a taboo. Here we can see Da Vinci's rather detailed perspective during his secretive dissection process and his secretive journaling. He's got codices out there that he rendered, and they were unknown and weren't found for years after his death, and they're the most profound. They're just profound. I think Bill Gates has the Codex Atlanticus, which is it's just beautiful. So here's Leonardo, where he's pointing to the location or root of human consciousness. He believed that was a natural soul. The leading minds at the time, philosophers during the Renaissance, were all invested in this question of where the spiritual throne of the divine was located within human anatomy, because they understood that the awareness of the divine was a function of their conscious apprehension, so they wanted to isolate where it was coming from. So with this depiction of Adam, who was metaphorically viewed as the first man, so there's only one on earth in this myth, he has a hidden dichotomy and a bilateral symmetry there within his neuroanatomy, which is an allegorical, metaphorical representation of the Godhead within man's consciousness. That's a bit of a confusing way to present, but essentially we can view the right side if it's demonstrating the human neuroanatomy. It would be similar. Well, it would be the same as the Adam sitting on the left and his personal conscious apprehension and state of mind. So there's only Adam. There's no God reaching out of the sky, but Adam has the Father within. I noticed that through subterfuge, Michelangelo created a message that fits both the Catholic dogmatic idealization of an external God and the Hermetic Reformation presented by Pico with an eternal Godhead, and he did it simultaneously, which is genius beyond genius, I think. So this is a complement to the well-known ancient philosophical analogy which sums up all religious and scientific questions of the same ideal of trying to find the seat of the divine, and that's a simple phrase: know thyself. So this second, or I think this is the last question here is again, how will your artistic expression emerge? And I'll just make the point again: education guides the emergence of an idea. That's my personal belief. Well, education will foster the emergence of a good idea. It can't be a flippant, flick of the wrist kind of thing, in my experience. Which isn't true for every artist. Some artists, they learn from what they're rendering, and they can do it very quickly on a canvas. Just my experience was just very different. So again, with the question of subterfuge and Michael's technique of delivering a message when viewing the curved left arm here in this image. So you can see there's a unity of the geometric convention of the hippocampus with the Father's left arm. So the arms of his renderings in the human body form are significant and important within the context of the neuroanatomy. So my question to you is, did Michael use other forms of subterfuge to validate Pico's Unitarian Hermetic philosophy? And the answer is a definitive yes. So again, this question guiding my study is where I discovered the idea that the founding principle of my entire exhibition, The Light in the Veil, would be based on this question and the solutions that I found to my questions guiding my education. So let's focus on the right arm of Adam here. Remember that the arm positions of the Father side is an important feature of Michael's outline of neuroanatomy. Here's a 3D rendering which will highlight the hippocampal commissure. and the corpus callosum, which again are just terms used to identify structure, and also the unity between the bilateral symmetry of the human body form. Here's a better image of the front and side view of the hippocampal commissure. So I'm just focusing on that rendering on the left. I always viewed that as the homunculus, or a little man that was standing with his arms out, ready to I guess he looks kind of like a boxer in a boxing ring, wearing gloves there. So let's evaluate these geometric conventions with the awareness of human anatomy, which has the inherent design of bilateral symmetry. These images feature neuroanatomy, which would have been readily apparent to both Michelangelo and Da Vinci. So the middle image there, during their dissections, they would have had hands-on perspective on what this looked like within neuroanatomy. And it wasn't well known at the time. Again, dissections weren't exactly legal, but they both had an awareness of this. So this is how my artistic expression emerged. This is where my idea came from. My own personal emergence was through education, and then the identification of the subterfuge and messages embedded in works. All right, so there's a whole lot going on with this slide here. This is the full frontal view of that exhibition, my exhibition I just mentioned, called The Light in the Veil. There's a lot going on. So I want to share 4 primary pieces, which are right behind me here. This first one is called Princeps Concordia, which translates into Prince of Harmony. It spins around on a granite triangle base on a dolly system. 2,000-pound bearing system. He's about 350 pounds, and one feature here is within this neural anatomy cavity, there's a harp embedded here. This harp is titled Hippocampal Commissure. I'll just give you a close-up of this, hopefully you can see. So one important feature of this is that there's 2 seahorses united in a harmonious accord here. One piece of curly maple trimmed in ebony, and she's built to play. It's got a great little sound to it. I won't attempt to do that for you now. And that's not because I'm terrible at it. It's just in an effort to save some time. So the second piece right behind it, we have this panel, which again is a rendering of the hippocampal commissure. That's the title of this one. I'm sorry, this piece is titled Lyra Davidicus, Harp of David. And then the fourth piece is up here. It's the it's called Pineal Entanglement, and it's my abstraction of the pine cone and the geometry of a pine cone. So there's one other piece I'll get to in a minute. It's on the far right of this photo. But let's delve down into the 4 pieces so there's some clarity over all that all of that diversity and detail in the last photo. This first piece I want to share with you is this one titled, again, the Hippocampal Commissure. So from the previous slide, I demonstrated that unity in the body form in the middle there, and how it conformed to the arms and the bilateral symmetry of Adam as he was rendered on the ceiling. So I've done that through the unification of 2 angelics here. And I want you to see this here. His right profile I rendered here, and his left profile I rendered here. So these are meant to be exact likenesses of this rendering of Michael, the archangel. And so this represents the same symbolism as the seahorses of the harp. And that seahorse formation, again with Adam's arm, is here. It's right in this area here. And from this photo, I don't know if you can see it because the light's dim on this side, but I used Adam's torso as I got pretty close. I did it freehand, but I tried to bring that out in marble. And this is a very high grade marble. This is from Italy. It's the best marble in the world. It's got almost no veins to it, and it's a joy to work with. So this came from the same block, and again, this is granite here. So here is a video that I've put together that should provide us with a little better insight into. Sorry, I'm just having some technical difficulty here. I want this to demonstrate for you how that unification looks kind of in real time, where it all comes together. And I figured if I did this with some of my skill for rendering here, which has been newfound, it'd give you a better idea. So right there you can see how the wings conform to the cranial cavity, and the armature there on both ends conform to a similar geometric convention on both the external human side and the internal, and that's located within the head, the cranial cavity. So moving on here, the next piece I'll share is Princeps Concordia in a little more detail. So Pico della Mirandola, his nickname was the Prince of Concord because he inherited a large piece of land called Concord, and he was known as the Prince of Concord. So this piece is named after Pico, but it's an ode. It looks a lot like an archangel, but it's an ode to Pico della Mirandola. This is not what he looked like. I think you saw him from the previous slide. With regard to Pico's Unitarian philosophy and his Hermetic revolution, the Unitarian aspect of this piece is further demonstrated in this piece through the juxtaposition of the base, which unites and spins on two granite triangles. So these, from ancient geometry, the triangle represents a state of being. So two triangles united means the union of two states of man. The material anatomy of man, which is frontal view, with the spiritual or the mindful aspect of man, which is the rear view. So when you align this, you see the material and the triangles are straight. When you want to extract the harp and play the harp, these two triangles form a star, and that star throughout history and drilling right down into ancient geometry means the balance and the harmony between the material, the physical, and the spiritual, the mindfulness. So one important thing I want to point out is that Michael, he's known in every major faith-based system. He's known in every religion. He's in all the major religious texts reference Michael. So I chose the image of an archangel because I think a lot of it is the Norwegian appeal, so it sculpts really well. Michael is united. The Unitarian philosophy comes right through with Pico's philosophy, so it was a really nice dovetail into the philosophy I'm trying to represent here. And Michael was the perfect choice for this exhibition. He just seemed like the natural choice. So moving on to the next piece, which is embodied in the cranial cavity again. That's the hippocampal commissure. It's called Lyra Davidicus, or the harp of David, which was a shepherd boy that ended up becoming a king in the biblical sense. But also he played this mini Kenner harp, and it's gorgeous. I love it. So I carved that again out of one piece of curly maple, and it took longer to do this than the bust, if you can believe that. I found the Stradivarius recipe for varnish, and it was the 1504 version, and I brewed it in my own house, and I made a mess after the first 3 attempts, but on the 4th I nailed it. So this has about 20 coats of a very thin varnish, and it pulls out some of that striation of the wood, which is gorgeous. Sorry, I'm taking a little bit too much time here talking about myself. Okay, so hippocampus from Greek translates into seahorse. So you can see on the left side, that's our hippocampus. Everyone's got 2. And on the right side, there's a seahorse, and the geometric conformity from one to the other is profound. So as you can see, this hippocampal commissure, the unification of the two seahorses, is synonymous. It's the same as what you see on the right side. I love this photo and the colors of the seahorses, blue on black, and they're united with a kiss. I think it's cute, and also you see a little heart form there. So whoever took this photo did a nice job. Okay, so the next piece that also metaphorically demonstrates unified aspirations and the peak of human potential, enlightenment, if you will. This piece is titled Pineal Entanglement. It points upward, and it's got two divine proportions or golden means that work in opposite directions from one another that aspire to a pinnacle of height. And the geometry of this is fascinating. I think this piece was obviously very challenging. I did a lot of math to get it right, and I'm really proud of how it turned out. So you can see those two golden means or divine proportions up top spinning around in opposing directions. And also the location within neuroanatomy of the pineal gland is represented here. And here you can see it's one of the only central features on the human body that doesn't conform to that bilateral symmetry convention. It stands alone right in the center. And we have very few things that don't have a presence on both right and left sides. You got two lungs, two eyes. Here's a close-up of this dynamic symmetry. This is right after I finished sculpting this. And this is the top view, which gives you a better idea of those two opposite and opposing directions that aspire to a pinnacle. I love this view. Unfortunately, you can't see it from the top down. It's always elevated, but this is one of my favorite photos of this piece. That was relatively hard to do. Okay, the next piece I'd like to share is the wings. You can see at the top of this picture. This again represents the winged enlightened state of human consciousness within that neuroanatomy metaphor. So as you can see, I created a likeness to Da Vinci's drawings. This photo here is a better rendering of kind of a consolidation of photos that constitute his idea for how to achieve human flight, and he was fascinated with birds as well. So here's another couple close-up photos. These wings are 26 feet wide, and the bust of Michael, as you can see, is eye level with the viewer standing in front of this exhibition. So it really makes a strong point. Here's another view. And here again, this represents the pinnacle of human consciousness, an enlightened state or an expanded consciousness. It's very close and metaphorically similar to Hermes' winged god head analogy. It's got the pinnacle there in the middle, and you can see the wings expanding. And then this is Da Vinci's. It's a redo, or I think this is in the Smithsonian, if I'm not mistaken. And this is what Da Vinci's wings look like when they're constructed, based on those drawings. And this is a view of what I've put together and created that sits on top of my my exhibition there. You just saw that. I love this perspective, and I love the frontal perspective. It gives a little bit more of the detail, and it gives you an idea how tough that might have been to put together. So this next piece is a very sturdy tripod I used to support that whole work, that whole effort, and I affectionately named this piece the Gen3sis. When I cut off the nose there, it had a head that looked a lot like a Pragmanus. So, all right, the final piece of this exhibition. So to the far right, you can kind of make out a marble piece. This piece is called De Divina Proportione. It followed me to, I entered it. It was in an exhibition at St. John's College at Mitchell Museum. This front page, it made the front page of the Capitol, and that ended up opening up some opportunities for me. So I'm really grateful to St. John's. I won't go through a whole lot of detail with that, but they really put me kind of on the map, and I was very shy prior to that exhibition, but this broadened my horizons significantly. So again, this is the top view, and I appreciate this view the most. and he sits 4.5 feet off the ground, so everyone that walks by can view this perspective, and I think it's meaningful with regard to the momentum and the motion of the piece, and also the movement of the wings. I tried to create movement for the viewer. Okay, the frontal view of these two pieces side by side. This depicts my effort to enter into the conversation with Michelangelo and Da Vinci, where, as you can see on the right, similar to Michelangelo's rendering of the Father on the right here, with the angels surrounding the outstretched hand of God, I have rendered a hand reaching up to elevate humanity to take flight with the angels, or with angel wings. So this image is my allegorical parallel or analogy to this image here. So this is an external and rather antiquated idea of reaching out to God in an external relationship. I think we all know a very large hand of God isn't going to reach out at the clouds at this point, but it's certainly feasible that he within our consciousness would be present. The nature of the scientific understanding of consciousness and the heights that we can reach when we get ideas that help us provide for a better life for ourselves. This is the same analogy I'm trying to make here. The image on the left, it features the aspiring steps leading to enlightenment. Every human being is capable through rigorous approach to achieve personal enlightenment. So juxtaposed with the piece on the right, De Divina Portione, the piece on the left is a metaphor for the internal experience associated with neuroanatomy and the Godhead within. So again, I'm trying to enter into the conversation with Michelangelo and Da Vinci by extending a different perspective. The internal conscious apprehension of an elevated state of consciousness, and kind of, again, the antiquated approach to trying to seek out and find a God externally, or having to go to certain geolocations and worship an external God. So another attribute of this exhibition. So I think we're all familiar with the depiction of a caduceus, which I mentioned before as being the staff on the top of the staff of Hermes, which is the messenger of the gods, or who is. So I've created this whole piece to geometrically and philosophically serve as an allegory and metaphor of the caduceus. And I show you a rendering of that here, where this piece plays through, and you can see how one image conforms to the other, and they're very similar. So special focus here is on the snakes and how they're aspiring up to a pinnacle there and meeting. This looks a lot like a ladder. I hope you can see that too. The central pillar would be an area where someone could step up and aspire to reach a heightened elevation. And the two snakes are obviously proportional on each side, which is an allegory for the ancient allegory of this piece. This piece that you're looking at is called Jacob's Ladder. It's an analogy or an allegory or a metaphor of the caduceus, which by the ancients is held as the orderly steps man can take while aspiring up a ladder of mindfulness towards enlightenment. So it's an orderly aspiration to find enlightenment and the living Godhead within each of us. So I just want to give you a close-up of that piece here, which gives you a better idea of the analogy. I hope you can see it with the lighting in here. But again, this hangs off the wall in this perspective, so the viewer comes right in. I've used two divine proportions here at the center, which represents the same thing I identified with the pine cone. You can see two divine proportions aspiring to a new height. And this is the ladder here. And as the text of the Bible goes, this aspiration that humans can make up to a point of enlightenment, which is what this represents. In ancient times, the caduceus represented the same thing. So you can see the pinnacle here, and the pinnacle up there at the top of the exhibition are very same. I've tried to make an analogy between the two for you here. This is Australian eucalyptus, this is granite, and this is rosewood. And again, I used the same varnish as I did on the heart there. So moving on here, I put together a rendering of the two things I suffer from, and when I try to aspire up that same ladder, which are fear and ego. In my experience, the continuous management of control over fear and ego are the means of maintaining my balance on a journey towards expanded consciousness, to earn angelic wings and the Godhead of an expanded consciousness. So once you take a look at that in the pinnacle, it's pretty easy to identify the same analogy through Carl Jung and Adler's pyramid, which represents the aspiring order of the steps that are taken up the ladder of a pyramid towards what's termed here self-actualization, which is synonymous with enlightenment. So notice it ascends from basic needs at the base all the way up to self-actualization at the pinnacle. So in our present society, there's a bit of confusion about the transition between self-esteem and self-actualization. Materialism seems to be confused with the concept of the pursuit of purposefulness and fulfillment in our present times. However, notice that the pinnacle of this period is a relationship between pursuit of creativity, art, where a true purpose and fulfillment is achieved through sharing the fruits of your labors with others. Personally, I believe that this concept is the crux of what is identified in our American Constitution as the pursuit of happiness. In my experience, balance and hard work is what is required for me to achieve the emergence of artistic expression, and I have to fight every day to re-identify with that priority in life, so that I can move forward with a steady hand. So questions pertaining to inspiration, the final one is, how will your artistic expression emerge? And I believe this is identification of your genius and the innocent child within, and it's a constant spiritual battle between fear and ego, for me. So do you remember when you were a child with crayons drawing a picture of your mom and dad and any brothers or sisters standing in front of your house with a nice little tree looming in the background on the right side? My experience is something similar to that. The innocence of a child, it's beautiful when you watch a child with their innocence do anything, but specifically when they're drawing and they're trying to capture their microcosm and present it to mom and dad so they can put it on the refrigerator. So I can't say I spent all my time in that place, the heaven on earth that's available to us. That's in a present tense and a living reality. It's a matter of human perspective. It's a faculty of human perspective, I believe. So I don't spend all my time in heaven on earth, but when I have had brief glimpses of that, the innocence of a child that has no wants or needs, no need for more, no need for anything to support or subsidize your aspiration to enter, through the gates of Eden there. So a return to innocence where all of the necessary tools and know-how, the knowledge, become available, and the only thing left to do is sit down and do the work. So you remember mom and dad, they got excited about your drawing, and they buy you some crayons and some pencils and some paper, and it was just right there, and then you just started working through it. My experience is, I can't get into it, but it's been profound with how I obtained these materials when the financial resources weren't there at the time. So I'm very well aware of my journey with regards to inspiration and how it manifests throughout a journey. So most of my time is spent trying to master a spiritual, mindful battle with myself, trying to master the management of fear and ego. Every day I've got to refocus and center myself on priorities, and I'm always distracted by something better to do or something more that I need. And the hardest part of my day is getting into the studio and standing in front of the drafting board. It's a battle. One thing I've learned the hard way is that whenever I attempt to gain entry through the gates, through any artificial means or with a lack of integrity, Michael, or I think natural law, the intelligent design of nature, I self-identify that force with Michael, myself. So anytime I jumped up there and tried to poke my head through, and I lacked the integrity to enter, I was trying to do it through artificial means, which is possible for a glimpse, but that little innocuous glimpse, that little innocuous thing that you're using at first just becomes a monster, and you never get through again, and you're just trying to figure out how to live where things are normal, but you need that little artificial means to get there again. It's a terrible way to go. So Michael was there with a huge blue flaming sword to cut me down every time, and I've tumbled down to the last rung and fallen flat on the ground on my face countless times. So in retrospect, I believe this is a necessary cycle that provides the wisdom through trial and error that is necessary to aspire. So there's an old ancient saying that fools become wise by making every mistake and just acting so foolishly countless times that they finally become wise to all the ways they've made mistakes, and the last way to go is the way of wisdom, and that's been my experience. So I feel like the character man is demonstrated when he sticks with an impossible dream, and he keeps standing up again and again and again to give it another shot. And in my case, this has been accomplished by learning every example of what not to do. So moving on to the next slide here. I hope to have used these 4 questions to inspire you while you embark on your journey towards artistic expression. Okay, this is the last slide, guys. This is an image of my muse titled Prudence. Prudence stands side by side with the virtue of wisdom. Prudence is what guides us. Our virtue of prudence, when we exercise it, is what guides wise action into future providence. Or providence just means a better way, a more organized way to benefit your attempts to have a better life. So I want to share my perspective of what harmonic resonation looks like. So when I strum the chord from this entity, and I'm strumming the secret chord, harmonic resonation means that if I hit the C note here, it resonates through vibration, and the C note here that's strung in such a way that it will sound off the C when it's strummed by this bow. Through harmonic resonation, you don't need a bow. It oscillates and vibrates as a natural condition of sound waves. So this is, I believe, how we can use our personal accomplishments to extend energy and motivations to others along their personal journey, like a kind of a lighthouse for other weary travelers. So everything I produced here for you was from an inspired spiritual or mindful state of being, where I made use of the things that were useful and available in my aspirations to manifest an inner vision and share it with you. I hope my exhibition and my questions for you have inspired you to follow your inner child, your inner genius, while you manifest your inner vision and share it with others. So please feel free to forward this presentation to anyone you feel might appreciate the message of unity, or may appreciate how far down the ladder I've been and what's possible. And also anyone that thinks they're getting near the top, but they find themselves without purposefulness, and everything that they're consuming or seeking to get more lacks all kinds of satisfaction. I think that those are both spectrums that I've lived through with my early career and then digression. Those are forms of hell if they get intense enough, if you drive them hard enough. So I would love for you to share this with anyone who you feel as though may benefit from the experiences here and some of the art that I've produced. I know the current events with all that we are going through as a society that is threatening to cause a rather severe division in our society. I want to make just a couple not political statements. The ancients had a message that might make a whole lot of sense to some of us, or to some people out there, which is to say that great empires fall from within, and that the fall starts within self-destructive dark side that wants to divide and oppress and conquer. It starts within a self-destructive dark side. Therefore, I hope this presentation has inspired you with a motivation to use your unique and peaceful art forms to spread your own message that provides hope to others with your own vision of unity. Again, I want to thank you for joining me here at Gen3sis Studios. I feel that pictures and this presentation online that I've shared with you does little justice to the awe-inspiring sight of my whole exhibition when viewed in person. Therefore, I look forward to sharing these pieces with you firsthand when I find a viable venue. It's 15 feet off the ground and 26 feet wide, which will just barely fit into a couple places I've been knocking on the door of. But I'm in conversation, but it might be a while before I can get them up again. So again, thank you for joining me here at Gen3sis Studios, and I look forward to thanking you in person. That's a wrap, finally, right? All right, so I'm going to check the time and how long this took. This is my first take, so I'm sure I seem jittery, but if it's over a certain time amount, you won't know I took a first take because you'll be watching the second take. Thank you for joining me. That's a wrap.
So, from all of us in Arrow,